Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Penn Vicarage on this lovely Wednesday morning. I hope you are well and cheerful, and it's really good to see you this morning. Quick notice, if I may, just to remind you, this weekend we have a flower festival. Really looking forward to that. First one in a couple of years, Saturday and Sunday. If you're free, do pop in. Just enjoy God's wonderful creation and people's God-given creativity. So let's enjoy the flowers. It's really good to have Flower Festival back in church, a real sign of things reopening, a real positive, cheery sign. So come and join us on Saturday and Sunday, and we'd love to see you. To our reading for today, and I'm glad to say it's somewhat less gory than yesterday's, you'd be glad to know. It's the very famous Jesus feeding the 5,000, one of those standard Sunday school favourites, a lovely, lovely story. The difficulty with the story is there's so much in it that there's just, it's what you hold back really. But without further ado anyway, let's look at it. It's Mark's Gospel, chapter 6, and I'm reading verses 30 to 44. The apostles gathered around Jesus and told him all they'd done and taught. He said to them, "Come away to a deserted place all by yourselves and rest a while." For many were coming and going, and they had no leisure even to eat. And they went away in the boat to a deserted place by themselves. Now many saw them going and recognized them, and they hurried there on foot from all the towns and arrived ahead of them. As he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion on them, because they were like sheep without a shepherd, and he began to teach them many things. When it grew late, his disciples came to him and said, "This is a deserted place, and the hour is now very late. Send them away so they may go into the surrounding country and villages and buy something for themselves to eat." But he answered them, "You give them something to eat." They said to him, Are we to go and buy 200 denarii worth of bread and give that to them to eat?" And he said to them, "How many loaves have you? Go and see." When they'd found out, they said, 5 and 2 fish. Then he ordered them to get all the people to sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in groups of hundreds and fifties. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he looked up to heaven and blessed and broke the loaves and gave them to his disciples to set before the people. And he divided the 2 fish among them all. And they all ate and were filled. And they took up 12 baskets full of broken pieces and of the fish. Those who had eaten the loaves numbered 5,000 men. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Like I said, there's thousands of sermons in that. The question is where you start. We'll start with 2 things which are run like threads all the way through the Gospel of Mark, just to sort of confirm this is carrying on the theme. Firstly, Jesus doing things that only God can do. So we've got Jesus having authority over unclean spirits and sickness and uncleanness and the weather and so on. And here we have Jesus noticeably in the desert feeding people with bread and of course fish. And there's an instant reminder all those years ago to when the God's people were in the desert and they were hungry and God gave them manna from heaven to eat. And so when you hear of Jesus feeding large crowds of people in the wilderness, that's what you're supposed to think, that Jesus was doing something here that only God can do. So and that theme runs right the way through the kind of the authority and the divinity of Jesus. Here he is in the desert doing something that God does. That's the first thing to say about that. The other thing is, as I said to you, I think a couple of days ago, Jesus always works with us rather than around us. And he always involves the faith of the people. And it's quite interesting that when they ask him to sort of what he's going to do about all these hungry people, he says, "What do you got? Go and get what you've got." And they scratch together and they get these 5 little bits of bread and 2 little bits of fish and so on. And it's interesting that the constant theme running through, that it's the faith of the people. He didn't just sit down and give it to them. They had to do something, they had to take part in it as well. They had to have faith as well. So there are 2 themes in this which are constant, which run all the way through the Gospel of Mark, which continue through this. Firstly, you have Jesus acting, with incredible authority and doing things that only God can do, feeding people in the desert. That's what you're supposed to see there. And the other thing, of course, this constant theme about involving the faith of the people too. But there are 2 things which I think in particular, which I want to bring out from this reading as well this morning. Firstly, the compassion of Jesus. If you look at the very beginning, before he starts feeding anyone, he's clearly very tired, and he clearly wants time away with his disciples. But the crowd keep coming. But it's interesting that he could have been quite cross and told them to go, "Well, I need a bit of space," he could have done that. But he said, "No, I have compassion on the crowd because they're like sheep without a shepherd." In other words, they're rudderless. They've got no one guiding them. And it reminds us, of course, of when in the Old Testament books like Ezekiel and Jeremiah and so on, He talks about, and Isaiah talks about the bad shepherds who don't, who are selfish in their leading or don't lead properly or whatever. And here he says he has compassion on the people because they're like sheep without a shepherd. And I suppose I want you to see here really that Jesus' motivation in doing this is not just kind of a whiz bang, but actually it's really about because he had compassion on the people. And because he cared about the people, that's why he did what he did, because he had compassion on them, because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So I think we want to see that really from this reading this morning, that Jesus had compassion on them, as I say, because he really cared about them. And just see that Jesus cares. And hear again the message this morning, that Jesus cares for us and that Jesus cares for you. And please know in your heart that Jesus, and he had compassion on those people, and he has compassion on them, and he has compassion on us today. So, Jesus is actually about love and about compassion, and he shows it by feeding these people this morning. But there's one other thing, which again comes out through the Gospels and so on, which I haven't mentioned before, but I think it's really important. That's the importance of abundance. I think you have to see really that this miracle, like when he did water into wine and various other things, it's kind of over the top. I mean, 5,000 people, that's just the men. So you include the women and children, you could be talking 15, 20,000 people. That is a serious crowd of people. And he feeds them so much that there's abundance, that there's food left over, that there's 13 baskets of food left over afterwards. The scraps, and don't lose any. That he doesn't want to lose anybody or anything. But here he's talking about the sheer abundance of Jesus. This isn't just enough. This is more than enough. This isn't just, this isn't an austerity miracle. This is an over-the-top, abundant miracle. And I suppose I want us to grab hold again and re-envision the thought of the abundance of Jesus. That Jesus loves us, but not just a bit, not just enough, but he loves us over the top, pouring over. He gives them more than enough here. And I think we say awful phrases like God helps those who help themselves, and so almost implying God doesn't like helping us and so on. What this tells us here is that Jesus loves us and loves us super abundantly. And I want us to grab hold again of the idea that God really over the top loves us. That he isn't a God of austerity. He's not a God of doing just enough. He's a God of over the top, super abundant love. And he does it in this reading. And I want us to re-envision our faith, just what a wonderful God we are, who doesn't just love us enough. He doesn't just love us a bit. He doesn't just love us a lot. He loves us super abundantly, and did so by doing a wonderful, abundant miracle in our reading this morning. So unusually, 4 things this morning, 2 which come through the theme through the gospel. Firstly, Jesus doing incredible things that God's done, like feeding people in the desert, like he did. And the other thing, of course, is people taking part. So what have you got? The 5 loaves and 2 fish and so on. But the other 2 things to pick up, especially from this reading this morning, firstly is the compassion, that he could have told the people to go away because he was tired, but he had such compassion on them that he cared for them and did what he did. That even when he was tired, he still had compassion. He really loved them. And the other thing, of course, is to remember again the super abundant love of God, the abundance, the over the top, the outpouring, the pouring out of God's love, and the abundance of grace which God lavishes on you and me. Have a lovely day. God bless you, and I'll see you for more.